Hey, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to have Dr. Daniel Amen for the third time on my podcast.
Thank you so much.
Daniel, it's been a day. A lot has happened. New book. Oh, yeah. A lot has happened. Pandemic, kind of craziness. You clearly got inspired. So when you walked into my office and said, I wrote a new book, this is all I want to talk about. This is all I want to talk about. So for the person that has never met you before, who's Daniel Amen?
I'm a father and a grandfather and founder of Amen Clinics. I look at people's brains, and I'm on the mission to end mental illness by creating a revolution in brain health. I've been writing for a long time, sort of crazy. This is my 40th book.
I know, it's insane.
I love teaching people to love their brains because when you love your brain, you love your life.
So many of the people that will be listening or watching this are these hard chargers like you and I. You know, they built these great practices. They're real estate agents, they're mortgage loan officers, they're executives of companies, they're entrepreneurs, they're building tech. And I think every one of them struggles with the same thing that I've certainly struggled with. You've seen it thousands of times right inside your offices where these people walk in and they're like, I just don't feel like I have the edge anymore. Something's going on up here. Is it just... Talking with Chris Doom, our mutual friend, he's like, Ferry, you're just getting older. Is there truth to that?
Absolutely not. You're getting older and feel older if you have bad habits.
Yes.
That I can make your brain better next week, next month.
Yes.
10
years
from now. We actually have your brain, and we're
Thank God someone has my brain.
We are committed to making it better as we age. But that's the lie people tell themselves. I'm 40 and I don't remember anything. That's normal. No, you have bad habits. Or I'm 60, I'm 68. And it's like, oh, I can't remember anything. That's normal. Well, it's common.
Yes.
But it generally means you have bad habits.
Yes.
Or you're 85. Did you know 50% of people 85 and older will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease? I am just not okay with those odds. But you can't start when you're 82.
No.
Right? No, I mean, the earlier you start, the research was just horrifying. It says Alzheimer's disease starts in the brain decades before you have any symptoms. So if you're waiting to be troubled before you get serious about being healthy, it's a bad strategy.
I've heard that like melanoma, right? When I had melanoma removed my back a couple years ago, I'm like, I don't spend any time in the sun. Like I'm the lily white guy. Like I would die. And she's like, this is something you did 30 or 40 years ago.
Right.
And I was like, oh, it was those bad habits that 25, 30 years later. So you're saying it's the same thing. So, so just for the person that's listening, I get super excited when I'm around Daniel because I'm going to probably take more notes than you. So I challenge you. I want to talk about a bunch of stuff today. I want to talk about post-COVID pandemic recovery plan. You've saw thousands and thousands of patients through it. We're still hearing every single day people complaining about the COVID fog. I'm not 100%. When I asked this morning on Instagram, hey, I'm interviewing Daniel, who's got a question. One of the first questions was, I still don't have any taste. I still don't have any scent. And I just feel foggy in my brain all the time. And I had COVID like 8 months ago, right? So I think people are looking for what is the plan to get back on track? That's one. Destroying the ants, because I think it's one of the iconic pieces of work that you do and every person has to hear it. How do I get my immune health back? If there's one thing we learned during the pandemic, let's get our immune system right. I want to talk about happiness, but the note that I wrote down is happiness as it relates to the brain, right? I want to know like what I can do here to put a smile on my face more. I want to talk about Alzheimer's and dementia and what's out there, what can we expect? And then I want to talk about mental illness being the number one case of death amongst kids 25 and younger. And then I have like literally 15 questions from clients. We're gonna try to do all of that in an hour. Does that sound good?
Awesome. Actually, if we go through the 7 secrets in you happier, we're going to talk about virtually all of those.
Let's go right to happiness. Yes.
And, so why did I write this book? Is Americans are the unhappiest they have been since the Great Depression because of the pandemic, the societal unrest, the political divide, the negative news cycle. We've worn out our pleasure centers because of the constant gadget connections that we have. And happiness, write this down, is a moral obligation. Why?
Yeah,
This is
why?
not fluff.
Yeah.
We are not talking about fluff. It is a moral obligation because of how you impact other people. I can guarantee you,
Yeah.
if you were raised
Yeah.
by an unhappy parent or married to an unhappy spouse or raised an unhappy child, and you ask that person whether or not happiness is an ethical issue, they'll absolutely say yes. But when I was growing up in the San Fernando Valley, Roman Catholic school, was an altar boy, I can guarantee you that idea was nowhere to be found.
No.
If you're seeking happiness, you're selfish.
Yes.
Now, hedonism is the enemy of happiness.
Yes.
But let's start by saying this is an important topic. And what does everybody really want? They want to be happy. And we have so many lies of happiness, like, don't worry, be happy.
Yes.
That's totally a lie,
Yes.
right? People with low levels of anxiety die early
Yes.
from accidents and preventable illnesses. So I love Bobby McFerrin's song, Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Yeah.
Don't ever buy into that because you'll die early.
It's not a strategy to actually get there.
And marketers is, think of Coca-Cola. What's their slogan? Open happiness.
Yes.
That's a lie. It should be
Exactly.
open obesity, open diabetes,
yes,
open
exactly.
inflammation, open dementia, open depression, open illness.
Yes.
Because sugar is the enemy of happiness. And we have to talk about
Okay, Daniel, hold on. Sugar is the enemy of happiness?
the enemy of happiness. And
Why?
it makes you stupid. And Splenda is worse. Isn't that so interesting? Brand new study out.
Right.
They looked at stevia,
Yes.
Splenda, and sugar. And they divided this group of people into 3 groups. And they measured them before, their brain waves, their learning, short-term learning, long-term learning, and executive function.
Yes.
Stevia had no impact on any of those. Sugar decreased learning. It decreased short-term memory.
Interesting.
Splenda decreased short-term memory, decreased long-term memory, decreased executive function, so poison in those little yellow packets, and increased frontal lobe slow wave activity. What's that? It's dropping your frontal lobes.
Right.
And this is not a good thing. So secret number 4, which we'll talk about, is only love food that loves you back. And sugar, you love it, but it beats you up. I mean, it's an abusive relationship given that Americans on average eat 150 pounds of sugar a year.
And I heard recently like 70% of Americans are now either overweight, and I forget the number that was obese.
So 72% of Americans are overweight, 42% of Americans are obese.
That's a
and
shocking
I have
number.
published 3 studies
Yeah.
on 30,000 brains.
Yes.
As your weight goes up, the actual physical
Yes.
size and function of your brain goes down.
I
which
remember
should
that. Yes.
scare
Yes.
the fat off anyone, right? And when I first made that connection, because I have obesity in my family.
Sure.
And medical school, and I wasn't working out, and I got chubby, and I'd like try this diet, that diet, but I never had the motivation. But about 12 years ago, when I made that connection, I lost the weight
Yes.
because I'm not going to have a small brain, right? Because my first core value is authenticity.
Yes.
And I can't have a small brain
Yes.
and
Yes.
be the brain doctor.
No.
So I lost the weight. And we're in this body positivity movement.
Yes.
It's a bad movement. I'm not a fan.
Okay, talk about that, because I noticed that if I go clothing shopping, which I don't do often, like I literally find I used to be an XL. I didn't lose any weight. Now I'm a large. I'm like, everything is getting bigger. Like the clothing is getting bigger. I'm not getting bigger.
No, because the clothing industry knows we're unhappy with
Yeah.
our weight.
Yeah.
And so they lie to us. So if you're a 32 waist, well, you'll fit into a size 30 pants.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they want you to buy their stuff, and you don't buy stuff that makes you unhappy.
So someone
Another lie.
Yeah.
There's so many lies of happiness.
Bring it.
Alcohol
Yeah.
makes you happy. absolutely doesn't.
No,
Alcohol
alcohol's a
makes you
depressant.
depressed.
Yeah.
Alcohol damages your gut bugs, which becomes
Yes.
so important to
Yep.
happiness because they
Yep.
make neurotransmitters like serotonin. Marijuana is innocuous. That's totally a lie.
Yeah.
Teenagers who use marijuana have an increased risk of anxiety, depression, and suicide in their 20s. And now we have babies being born with high levels of marijuana in their tissues. That is bad for their development.
Daniel, we're down to 4 people now listening to this show. Okay, sugar is evil, and I can't do any of the things I want to do. Next year, you're going to tell me no caffeine, no alcohol, no weed. What's left?
A better brain. Because so many people go, but doc, don't take everything from me. I'm not taking everything from you. What I'm giving you is energy.
Yes.
What I'm giving you is memory. What
Yes.
I'm giving you is
Yes.
clarity.
Yes.
And so it's the 4-year-old's mindset. I want what I want when I want it. But what is it
Exactly.
that you really want?
Yeah.
Energy, memory, clarity,
Yes.
focus,
Yes.
longevity,
Yes.
connection.
Yes.
And do you have better relationships? Do you have better sex with a good brain or with a bad brain?
Yeah.
And when people get on a brain healthy program, their erections are better because it's about blood flow.
This is an adult show. Okay. We started down the road of the 7 secrets. I think you probably touched on 2 or 3 of them already. And now, like for the person listening, if you've never met Danny, now you understand why I like this guy so much, because we get to talk about everything here. So the 7 secrets.
So secret number 1
Yeah.
is happiness is a brain function.
Happiness is brain function.
And each of the secrets have a simple question. I don't know if you know BJ Fogg, but I love him. He's the director of Stanford's Persuasive Tech Lab. And he helps people on how people change.
Yeah.
And we created 50 tiny habits for the brain. But the mother habit, the most important habit, you guys should write this down, is whenever you come to a decision point in your day, just ask yourself, is this good for my brain or bad for it? And if you can answer that with information and love of yourself, love of your family, love of the mission you're on earth, pretty soon you're going to be making better decisions.
Yeah.
And I even played this game with my daughter, Chloe, when she was like 6. We called it Chloe's game.
Yeah.
It's like good for your brain or bad for it. Blueberries. She goes, oh,
Good.
thumbs
Yeah,
up, God's
yeah.
candy.
Yeah.
How about avocados? Oh, 2 thumbs up, God's butter.
Yeah.
How about sugar? Oh, no, that'll
Yeah.
make you stupid,
Yeah.
right? I mean, she lives in my family. Or hitting a soccer ball with your head. Oh, really stupid. Brain is soft, skull is hard, skull has sharp bony bridges, right? And if you play these games with their kids, you teach them. There's no curriculum. I just gave a big lecture at the Animal Convention Center to teachers in California. There's no brain health curriculum in California schools. Now, that is insane, right? If your brain is involved in everything you do, you have to love it and care for it. And so I did a study for this book. We gave 500 consecutive patient statement clinics. I have 10, soon to be 11 clinics around the United States. We see 10,000 patient visits a month. I gave 500 consecutive patients the Oxford Happiness Questionnaire. And then I scanned them. And then we looked at people who had high levels of happiness and compared them to low levels of happiness. And people with low levels of happiness had low blood flow, especially to the front part of their brain. They had low activity in the pleasure centers. So you have these 2 areas deep in your brain, interesting, called the nucleus accumbens. They respond to dopamine. And when they're low, you're sad. And what makes them low? Well, if you hit them too hard and too often, with alcohol, with marijuana, with gadgets, with pornography, you begin to wear them out. And so I've been blessed to see lots of fun, famous people. And we always talk about how fame wears out the pleasure centers
For sure.
in your brain.
How?
And so you never want to dump dopamine. You always want to drip dopamine.
How does go back to the fame part? How?
Because of the constant flood of adulation and awards and people screaming for you. It's like, yes, yes, yes. But then pretty soon, that doesn't
get
do
numb- you
anything.
get numb to it.
for-
Yeah.
Just like with an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
It begins to take more and more to have the same effect. So fame, pornography, drugs, alcohol, high risk behaviors. It's like, people, they have affairs and they have them repeatedly
Right.
because they're seeking
Yeah.
dopamine. And we want to look, we have to drip this thing, because if you dump it, you wear out your pleasure centers. There's a wonderful book I love called Thrilled to Death. And we unleash this technology, video games and smartphones and texting and
Right.
TikTok. They're just dopamine junkie machines.
Right.
And you have to be thoughtful, careful on how you engage with those things. Otherwise, they're going to steal your dopamine, deaden the nucleus accumbens, and then you feel depressed. And then they give you antidepressants, which change your brain to
a bad
need
cycle.
them
Yeah.
in order for you to feel normal. Little sidebar. The pharmaceutical industry, when it comes to psychiatry, is not interested in the order business.
No.
They're interested in the reorder business. So
Yep.
once you start, many of the medications I prescribe as a psychiatrist, you won't stop. And that's not the point, right? I mean, you went all this time without being depressed. You went through a hard time. Why do you want to take something that you might have to take for the next 30 years?
And watching, young kids that we know trying to get off that stuff, it is hard. It is hard. You know what? I'm interesting. You didn't put vaping in there.
Well, vaping's absolutely in there. It's one of the weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
And I adopted, I don't think I told you this, but it was about 6 years ago, my nieces were taken by Child Protective Service into foster care. And I tried to wrap services around their parents, and they just could never sort of get it. So right before the pandemic, we adopted them. And so, and I adore them. And I dedicated my book, The End of Mental Illness, to them. I'm like, we are going to end mental illness. And about 8 months ago, I found this 16-year-old, now 17, vaping. And I'm like, no, we are not doing this. You are not going to live here if we're not aligned.
Yeah.
And so she ended up getting grounded for like 4 months. But the best thing that ever happened, because our bond got closer, and she knows she has a choice in her life. She can go to darkness or she can go to light. Now I give her a ton of support, right? But vaping deadens your pleasure centers. Yeah. And so then you have to vape in order to feel okay. So people who vape don't vape to feel awesome. They vape so they don't feel awful.
It's almost like that. I think you and I talked about it once. My buddy, Dr. Dane, said everyone's in a state in some area of their life of either dis-ease, wellness, or greatness, right? And what I see with kids that vaping or adults that are vaping, it's like they go to dis-ease and they smoke to get back to wellness or some state of normalcy, but none of that gives us greatness.
And it's artificial, which is why I love this concept I talk about in the book of drip dopamine.
Right. So give us
dump it.
Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, so you avoid low value dopamine activities. So whether it's on your phone all the time or alcohol or marijuana, those are low value dopamine activities. Pornography, which is just everywhere. I'm seeing 8-year-old boys addicted to pornography. It's like put parental controls
on your phone,
on gadgets
on
if you give them to children, and probably don't give them to their 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And then engage in high value dopamine activities like sunlight. Oregano, of all things, pumpkin seeds, volunteering,
ping pong,
my
whatever.
favorite.
I know.
Today's a very special ping pong day because I got a table for my kids.
All right.
That's what I'm going to do tonight. But there's so many sort of simple things to do, like pumpkin seeds that can increase dopamine, or really healthy, delicious food increases dopamine. The banana split you get increases dopamine, but it increases it too much. And if you increase it too much, you begin to deaden your pleasure centers, which is why do people run with the bulls? I haven't figured that out. That's insane. I mean, that's a dump dopamine.
Right.
That is a dump dopamine, but it's not smart.
Okay. So one is happiness in brain function.
Happiness
and a whole
is
lot
of brain function.
Yes.
So, and this can go to the question about Alzheimer's disease. So if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed for trouble, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And this is in the chapter on Get Your Brain Right. But there's never going to be a pill. There is never going to be a vaccine for Alzheimer's disease. Why? It's not one thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's going to be a pill for depression. I don't know if you saw a big scandal study out of the United Kingdom that low serotonin is not the cause of depression, and that the whole SSRI industry is nonsense.
Yeah.
Now, I know SSRIs work for the right brain, but the idea that you can take depression or Alzheimer's disease and say it's one thing is insanity.
Right.
And so there are many roads to Alzheimer's disease, like there are many roads to depression. And if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind.
Give us the 11.
So B is for blood flow. Low blood flow is the number one brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease. It also is associated with depression and ADHD and schizophrenia. You never want to do anything that steals your blood flow. So what does that? Vaping, nicotine, caffeine, alcohol, any form of heart disease, hypertension, being sedentary, spending too much time watching television. So for each of the risk factors, we'll say, well, how do you know if you have it? And SPEC, the study I do, is a blood flow study. But if you have any of those things I just talked about, and then what do you do about it? Is you exercise, right? I mean, you and I bond in part because we have the same trainer.
Yes.
And exercise is really important to us. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain. Ginkgo, one of my favorite supplements, because it increases blood flow. Vinpocetine increases blood flow. Cayenne pepper, oregano, rosemary, beets, of all things. I have a supplement company, Brain MD. We're making a new nitric oxide product. And, people are like, oh, let's call it heart health. I'm like, no, we're a brain health organization. B is for blood flow. Oh, guess what? When you get better blood flow, you get it everywhere.
Right.
And I used to say, whatever's good for your heart is good for your brain. And then I wrote my book, The Brain in Love. And I'm like, whatever's good for your heart is good for your brain is good for your sex life.
Yes.
R is retirement and aging. The older you get, the more serious you need to be. Because what happens to the brain, it's sort of like what happens to your skin, right? As we age, our skin starts to fall off our face. The same process happens in the brain.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to. Like I have a brother-in-law who's the same age I am. His face is deeply wrinkled. Mine isn't, because we have wildly different habits.
Yes.
And so also in retirement and aging, the risk factor is loneliness. And what did we do during the pandemic? Like, don't get me started. We isolated people. We killed people. The policies killed people because they isolated people. Disconnection. So isolation, disconnection, and retirement. If you are in a job that does not require new learning, you have a higher risk of dementia. If you retire and you don't pick up something else to learn, you have a higher risk of dementia. If you have high iron levels in your blood, it promotes aging and you have a higher risk of dementia. So I tend to accumulate iron, so I mostly stay away from red meat, and I go donate blood twice a year because I don't want to have anything that promotes aging.
Interesting. So I want to interrupt for a second. What about remote work?
Remote work can be awesome, or it can be a nightmare. And it depends. We're going to get to this in part 2 on your brain type. If you're a sensitive brain type, remote work's a disaster for you. If you're a spontaneous brain type, you're fine with it. So the I in bright minds is inflammation, the first I. And it is a major cause of dementia and depression.
Okay, so I knew all the other problems, but I didn't know dementia and depression associated to inflammation.
Yes.
Remind everybody what causes inflammation.
So many different things, but it's when you overactivate your immune system and it thinks there's trouble it has to take care of.
Yeah.
But when inflammation becomes diffuse, you end up with an autoimmune disorder. You end up with pain. You end up with redness in your face, which you'll often see called rosacea. And so inflammation is often caused by gum disease. And so everybody should be a flossing fool.
Yeah.
Gum disease is a major cause of heart disease, depression, and dementia. And so making sure I love my dentist, he loves me back.
Yeah.
I'm there on a regular basis. Having low levels of omega-3 fatty acids increase inflammation.
Fish oils.
And you know what I did? I did a study of 50 consecutive patients to our Costa Mesa, California clinic. And I measured their omega-3 fatty acid levels. And people who are not taking fish oil, 49 out of 50 had suboptimal levels of omega-3s. Stunning levels. So omega-3 supplements are really important, or fish on a regular basis. But fish is problematic. There's a brand new study out of Florida where it'll blow your mind. Researchers from Florida International University looked at bonefish, and they looked at what percentage of bonefish had pharmaceutical medications in their tissues. On average, each fish had 7 pharmaceutical tissues in their body: antidepressants, opiates, benzos, antibiotics. This is not where you want to get your medication. I'm like, you don't have to go to CVS, just go to the fish market.
Well, what about I don't know if it's farm raised or, whatever, fish from New Zealand or something like that. Is
probably
it
better?
Right.
Yes. So where it's sourced is better to see, what's in the water that it's raised in, but you want to be very thoughtful, which is why I like omega-3 fatty acid supplements, because they're purified. And
you worked with Tony after you worked with me, Tony Robbins, and I remember listening to something where he talked about, I got somebody told me I was supposed to eat fish and it was good for my brain, so I had salmon 4 times a day.
Swordfish,
or swordfish. That's
which
what it was.
is the
and
most mercury dense
Yes.
swordfish. Not good.
Not a good move.
No, and then he started having memory problems on stage.
Yeah.
And he's like,
I remember.
Not a good thing.
Yes.
And now he just looks younger than ever.
Yeah. Good work.
So
what's BRI?
Gum disease, low omega-3s, processed food, sugar.
Yeah.
So I'm not a downer to just be a downer. Yeah. It's I want you to live a long time with vitality.
Right.
And sugar is the enemy. Yeah. And you have to get over that 4-year-old mindset of I want what I want when I want it, right? I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and she's totally like that. And I adore her.
Yes.
But no, you need to get, if I gave into her or her mom gave into her every time she yelled, she's going to create a behavior problem. If you give into yourself,
for sure,
every time you have an urge, you're going to create your own behavior
It's a
problem.
downward slide. Okay, but somebody's going to ask, but there's got to be do I get a release once a week? Do I get a cheat day? Is it, what happened to everything's okay in moderation?
Yeah, everything in moderation is the gateway thought to hell, because it's just, this is how I'm going to cheat. It's let me
that could be the moment right there that I want on Instagram, just in case you guys were wondering.
It's the gateway thought to hell.
Moderation is the gateway to hell.
Right, because it's I'm not really serious, and let me start looking for all the ways to cheat.
Yeah.
And cheat days. Let's see. Would you ever give an alcoholic cheat days?
No.
Would you ever give a sex addict cheat days? No. Why would you give yourself cheat? Drew Carey said it best, the comedian who lost a whole bunch of weight. He said, eating crappy food isn't a reward.
Yeah.
It's a punishment. And I knew he'd
yes.
stay healthy because you got to get your
the right
mind
psychology.
right. I mean, you
Yeah.
know this.
Yes.
Mindset
Yes.
is everything.
Yes.
And some people, when they fail, they feel pain. The pain centers in their brain light up and they don't try anymore. Other people who fail feel motivated and they're going to overcome whatever challenge they're dealing. I want you to learn how to overcome.
Okay, before we started, you were telling me about the work you did with Justin Bieber. I think there's an important distinction here for the person that's listening, because there's every time I'm with you, I'm reminded, just stop everything that is bad. Just get back to being healthy for your brain. Like, you know what to do, Ferry. But someone is listening right now going, he just removed all joy and happiness. There's no more Christmas. There's no more Thanksgiving. There's like, everything is gone. But tell them what the distinction that Justin got, because I think that's a key distinction for people to reframe their thinking.
So, you know, I'm in his new docuseries called Seasons. And it came out, I've been his doctor for a long time. And like many celebrities that I treat, he'd show up or not. He'd do what I said or not. But when he went through a really hard time a couple of years ago, he came into my office and he said, I think I understand what you're trying to tell me. My brain is an organ like my heart is an organ. If you told me I had heart problems, I'd do everything you said.
Right.
Now, he loves his brain and he acts like he loves his brain, right? So if you have this mindset, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's a 4-year-old's mindset. It's not, oh my God, I have a 50% risk of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Trust me, you don't want that. You don't want that not only for you, you don't want it if you actually love the people around you. And guess what? Every day you're either modeling for them health or you're modeling illness. And given our society is just going the wrong way and we're in this toxic soup of marketing bad things for people. I just saw Charlotte McKinney on, I do a lot of stuff on TikTok. And I saw a post from her, and she used to be the girl that Carl's Jr. used in their burger commercials. And I'm like, you're associating, this woman is going to want you if you eat their double bacon cheeseburger. And it's like, no, she's not going to want you.
It's a hell of a sales pitch, though. It's a
hell of a sales pitch.
Yes.
Using neuroscience to hook you. It's evil. When you think about the outcome, it's evil. So the G in Bright Minds is for genetics. But people get genetics all wrong.
This is actually a question I got from one of my clients who said to me, you know, I'm Irish, so you know, I get the shakes and, you know, I've got these issues, these neurological issues, and it's because I'm Irish and I love you and you know who you are because we literally just had a session. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'll ask him, but I think I already know the answer.
Genes are not a death sentence.
No.
What they should be is a wake-up call.
It's like
I'm Irish, I probably shouldn't drink.
Right. It's the loaded gun, but you pulled the trigger.
Right.
That's what somebody told me once, and I was like, that's it.
So I have heart disease and obesity in my family, but I'm not overweight and I don't have heart disease. Why? I'm on an obesity prevention program every day of my life. If I had addiction in my family, I'd be on an addiction prevention program every day of my life. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't use drugs because I know they may steal. And I don't want anything stealing from me. Right? Because it's like, what is it you want? Do you want the mountain of fries or do you want a waist that you like, that you're proud of? Do you want the mountain of booze or do you want a healthy brain and clarity and energy? I mean, it's like, what do you want? And that's ultimately, you get to choose. And I do the fork in the road exercise with a lot of my patients.
Do it right
It's
now.
like, let's go down. So if you're listening.
It's like the Dickens patterns. Like, go ahead, go.
Well, it's so what do you want? So let's imagine a future where you just keep with the bad habits that you have. What's it going to be like a year from now? You know, probably a few more pounds, probably dropping a few more words. What's it going to be like 5 years from now? 10 years from now? What's the impact on the people you love? What's the impact on your business? And generally, ultimately it's people's worst nightmare. It's I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
Or come back to the fork and let's go down the right side, and where you really think about your health and you think about your brain and you think about what you really want in life, what you want in your relationships, your work, your money, your physical, emotional, spiritual. What do I want? And I just make better decisions, right? Is this good for my brain or bad for next week? You're going to be feeling better. Right. Next month, you're going to be feeling better. Next year, even 10 years from now. I have this great scan of someone in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 24 years apart. Her brain is dramatically better when she's 81. I'm so happy for her. And she's painting. She's still writing. She's creating. Do you want that, or do you want to not know your name?
Right.
I mean, the level of stress. So when you think of, I can't have this or I can't have that, it's really the wrong discussion. It's what do you want?
Right.
And is your behavior getting you what you want, right? I mean, that's what you help people clearly define what you want. And then here are the strategies to get what you want. And that's just step one. So genetics.
But I want to ask, tell them about your father.
There's so much to say.
I think about the choices he started to make when he finally started listening to you. And, I think about the 6-minute plank. I think about his brain health. I think about, how he was able to do so much more. Because someone's listening right now saying, but Daniel, I'm 63.
So my dad was 85. And my dad and I had a complicated relationship. When I told him I was going to be a psychiatrist, he asked me why I didn't want to be a real doctor, why I wanted to be a nut doctor. And it's just, that was our relationship, right? Couldn't please him. He was critical.
Never enough.
And then when I started looking at the brain in 1991, I'm like, brain is an organ. I need to get healthy.
Yeah.
And he's like, great. My son, who's a nut doctor, is now a health nut. Yeah. And he said, what's with you and the nuts? And belittled me, made fun of me. Until he was 85 and he got sick. And they had mold in their house. He developed chronic cough and then a heart arrhythmia. And he got depressed. And I'd never seen this guy depressed. He used to say, I give heart attacks. I don't get them.
Tough as nails.
And he was so sad when I came to visit him. He's like, I'm sick of being sick. What do you want me to do? And the only reason he asked me is I'd been authentic. I'd lived the message despite his criticism. And he's so stubborn. He did everything I asked. In fact, I have 6 siblings. He'd text them. He's like, your brother wouldn't like this. What do you think Danny would think about that? And that was never part of my life to have him. I knew he loved me and I knew he was proud of me, but never say that to me. And he lost 40 pounds in 6 months. He went back to work. We exercised every Sunday together, and he could do a plank twice as much as I could.
I was thinking about the 6-minute plank as I sit there, and 3 minutes ago, Daniel's dad did this for 6 minutes in his 80s.
Yeah. And so how do you change the people you love? Is you live the message.
Yeah. That's it. It's, Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Okay, so let's move away from Bright for a second. Let's go to happiness as a brain function, right? Habit 1. Is this good for my brain or bad for my brain? Take us beyond there, because everybody, happiness has become, Harvard has a class on this. There's how many books written on happiness, but I'm not going to say a lot of it is fluffery. A lot of it is good.
A lot of it's fluff.
Yeah, but there's always
and
some
it's
good
social science as opposed to neuroscience.
Exactly.
So secret number 2 is happiness has to be geared to your brain type. What makes some people happy, in fact, makes other people miserable. And so the idea, do all these things, whether it's novelty or volunteering or forgiveness, and that you'll make you happy. No. So there are 5 primary types I've learned based on imaging. There's a balanced brain type, and most anything will make you happy. There's a spontaneous type. That's my ADD group. And you need novelty. and you hate routine.
Yep.
There's the persistent brain type where you love routine and hate novelty. You hate surprises.
Right.
There's the sensitive type where you crave connection. Pandemic was hardest on that group.
For sure.
And there's the cautious type that craves safety. And the pandemic was really hard on them as well.
Mm-hmm. What was the first one again?
Balanced.
Balanced.
Where most
How did you define
anything-
balanced?
When we see a healthy brain, it generally goes with people who are balanced. They're not very anxious. They're not rigid. They're not sad. They're not terribly impulsive. They just go through life in a consistent, happy way.
Got it.
And the spontaneous people.
I just wrote down a name of the person that's just Claude Yacol, right? A really dear friend of mine. Shout out to Claude.
No, people could see these people.
Well, no.
And
So
ultimately-
spontaneous, a little more ADHD type.
That's my
kind of bouncing
ADHD
all over the
type.
place.
Sleepy frontal lobes.
Right.
They love surprises.
And they need
They're always on the
this
go.
all the
They
time.
have lots of ideas.
Yeah.
They start lots of companies, but they don't grow them.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Or
they
don't-
need
they
to
don't finish anything. That's
don't
my experience with them.
finish.
Right. They need a finisher because they're really good at starting. Where the persistent person is a great finisher.
Right.
Right?
They're
They get
your
things done.
accountants.
Yes.
They love detail.
accounting,
but
yeah.
they're also argumentative and oppositional. And
Sure.
if things don't go their way, they get upset. No matter what it is you say to them, they'll argue with you. It's like a beautiful day. Well, no, not really. It was a nicer day yesterday.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it's like automatic.
Yeah.
And the spontaneous tend to marry the persistent people.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's 30 years of fighting. I sent this cartoon out to my staff. The older guy, and his head's down, and he's like, every day for the last 30 years, you've just told me what I've done wrong. And she goes, it's been 31 years.
Sensitive, cautious, persistent, spontaneous, and balanced. How does somebody take a message like we're talking about today and go to a sensitive person who is going to take it personal, is going to take it potentially as an attack? You know, they can go in so many different directions, mainly at themselves. How do they get this message to that person or the cautious person?
Oh, they love this because it's a way to help them feel better. And because they don't like feeling the way they do. And so how can I feel better? Like for the sensitive person, learning to kill the ants, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Saffron. I love saffron. It's one of my favorite supplements. There are 24 randomized controlled trials showing that saffron is equally effective as antidepressant medication.
Really?
But rather than steal your sex drive, it's pro-sexual. When I first read that study, I'm like, pay attention. And it helps your memory. There's actually been 4 studies with Alzheimer's disease showing that saffron can help decrease, improve memory.
Yes.
And I'm like, pay attention. And then over time, 24 randomized controlled trials with 30 milligrams of saffron. And so, or the cautious type, you know, so much anxiety today.
Yes.
It's theanine and ashwagandha and magnesium and GABA. They're natural things, learning diaphragmatic breathing, hypnosis.
Yeah.
But what's happening today, even among teenagers, they're getting benzos. That's a crime. Because if you start a benzo, it increases your risk of dementia and they're addictive. And why would you ever start something that people are going to have trouble stopping? Why not give them skills before you start giving them pills?
There's way more money in the pills.
Way more money.
Sorry.
And you have to come back.
Yes. Yes. Okay. This is really interesting because I look at this sometimes like you look at like maybe a personality profile. So you can see some commonalities and some traits as it relates to this. So this is super interesting. Okay. What's number 4?
So 3 is just
3,
supplement
sorry.
your brain.
Yes.
And so the
Supplements
question
was on the list of a lot of people's questions too. So this is good.
the question for number 2 is, am I doing something that makes me uniquely happy every day? So rather than thinking, oh, I should do this because it says that's what makes you happy, it's what makes me uniquely happy today. And for me, it's creation. When I create something, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And it's also connection.
Yeah.
If I'm connected, I'm happier.
Contribution.
Yeah.
I'll answer questions on Instagram. Like if I'm having a bad day, like I tell people, like if I'm having a bad day, I just go to Instagram or say, how can I help? Because it's no longer about me. I can't be in my own head. I'm only about contribution, connection, loving on others. So it's
And
interesting.
you are dripping dopamine.
Big time.
You're not dumping it.
Yes.
If you went, well, let me get the scotch,
Yes.
then you're dumping
Exactly.
dopamine. And long-term contribution keeps you young. Alcohol makes you old.
In the book, do you break this down for people that are maybe over analyzing, seeing themselves in multiple? At times I feel balanced, and then at times I'm persistent.
Well, there's actually 16 types. There's
Yes.
5 primary types that we
Yes.
talked about. But sometimes, like I'm training a new doctor, and there's in the book, I send people to a brain type test. And she's
What's
like,
the
I'm
brain
type
test?
6.
Okay.
And type 6 is she's spontaneous and persistent. And I texted her right back. I said, do you have a history of addiction in your family? She said, my dad's a raging alcoholic narcissist. And oh, by the way, I have addiction on both sides of my family. And I'm like, these are the things to do. And these are the supplements that can help.
Yes.
And so that goes to 3. And the little question is, am I supplementing? Am I nourishing my brain
Yes.
every day? And I think everybody should take a great multiple vitamin. Everyone should be taking an omega-3 fatty acid, either in fish oil or in algae-based, if you're vegan. Everybody should be doing that. Everybody should optimize their vitamin D level.
That's vitamin B. Yes.
And depending on your type. So if you're sensitive, saffron can be really good. If you're cautious, theanine can be great. If you're persistent, 5-HTP can help because it gets you out of the loops of thinking. Green tea extract for our spontaneous people. And so there's a whole chapter on, okay, so what supplements should I take based on my unique brain type?
I heard green tea extract is also good for inflammation.
Green tea extract is good for so many things.
Yeah.
It improves memory, it decreases aging.
Somewhere
I'm
here I have
a
that.
huge fan of it. And then secret number 4 is only love food that loves you back.
Yeah.
Like you're in a relationship
Right.
with food. And I heard in some of the questions you were asking me, it's like, well, some people are in a bad relationship. And I don't know in the past if you've ever been in a bad relationship, but I was married for 20 years to someone who didn't like me. I mean, it was just hell. And growing up Catholic, you're not supposed to get divorced. You're going to hell. And then I realized I'd already been there. And so I'm married to my best friend.
Right.
We love each other.
Right.
We often, talk about being best friends. I am not going to be in a bad relationship with food. I'm only going to love food that loves me.
Yes.
Because I love me. Yeah. And why would I ever put something in my body to hurt me unless I was stupid? And I mean, I believe in it that much. Your brain is 2% of your body's weight, but it uses 20 to 30% of the calories you consume. If you're on a fast food diet, you have a fast food mind. And people that you and I serve, they're high-performing people.
Right.
So if you want to be high-performing, you need high-performing nutrition.
Yes.
And so it's just that one little question.
Right.
Do I love it, and does it love me? Am I choosing what I love that loves me back? And secret number 5, you'll love, it's master your mind and gain psychological distance from the noise in your head.
Say that again.
Master your mind.
Yes.
And gain psychological distance from the noise in your head. Stop believing every stupid thing you think. Thoughts come from all sorts of places. They come from our genes.
Yes.
I mean, they're actually written into our genetic code. I have anxiety written into my genetic code because when my grandfather was 19, he watched his brother be killed by a train. And that happened before he made my dad. And so that trauma changed his genes through a mechanism called epigenetics, and he passed that tendency for anxiety on to me. So I was like a little kid and I'm anxious, biting my nails, which actually turned out later is a good thing because your microbiome's better, your immunity's better. You asked me about that. So I was biting my nails and anxious a lot, and I had no idea why. And so thoughts come from your ancestors. They come from the voices of your mom or dad. I have 6 siblings and 5 sisters, so lots of their voices in my head. They come from the news you watch, the music you listen to.
Social media, like on and on.
And they lie.
Yeah.
Just because you have a thought has nothing to do with whether or not it's true.
Bingo.
And if you can just sort of step back and watch them, and not attach, because it's not the thoughts you have that make you suffer. It's the thoughts you attach to that make you suffer. So for 30 years, I've been teaching people to kill the ants. Automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. And I had somebody I do a series on Instagram called Scan My Brain, where we take young
my wife and I watch it, yes.
influencers, and we did super cute Amber Childers this week, and it's like my career is over.
Yeah.
And she's all of 34.
Yes.
And I'm like, is that true? Yes. Is it absolutely true? No. How does it make you feel? Awful.
Right.
How does it make you act without motivation? What's the outcome of that thought? Suffering. And how would you feel if you didn't have the thought? Happy. And how would you act if you didn't have the thought? Motivated. And what's the outcome of not having the thought? Working. And so we take the original thought,
Right.
I'm a failure, or my career is over, and you just turn it to the opposite. My career is not over.
Right.
It's like, is that true? She said, well, I worked last week. So it's...
My favorite question is that true?
Is that true?
And are you sure if it's true?
You're absolutely
right. You
sure.
just you have to keep. So you and I do this. We do it with people, and we're trying to get people to do it with themselves. What have you found to help somebody just snap out of it? Snap out of it. Stop yourself. Ask yourself.
But
it's
a practice, though.
I know.
And I have a book coming out next year called Change Your Brain Every Day, and the idea is brain and mental health are daily practices.
1,000%.
It's what do you do every day? And the practice is whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And then just ask yourself, is that true?
Yeah.
And then quickly flip it to the opposite. Yeah. Tana never listens to me. I've had that thought. And it's like, I never listened to Tana. I'm like, oh no, what's that? Right? It's And then another strategy in the book, which is super fun, is give your mind a name.
Yeah.
And that you can gain psychological distance. Yeah. So I was interviewing.
Or a couple names.
Well, I gave my mind the name of my pet raccoon when I was 16. Because I actually had a pet raccoon. Yeah. And I loved her, but she was a troublemaker. She TP'd my mom's bathroom. She ate all the fish out of my sister's aquarium. Yes. She'd leave raccoon poo around the house.
Yes.
And that's my mind.
Yeah.
It just stirs up trouble. Like it'll hold up signs like you're a freak or you're a failure or what's the matter with you. Yeah. And, initially when I came up with that, I'd like in my mind just go put her in the cage. Yeah. It's like, I don't need to listen to you. But then I had this epiphany and I realized when I had Hermie, the raccoon, when she'd get all rambunctious, I'd actually put her on her back and tickle her. Yeah. And pet her and love her. Yeah. And she would just purr. Because raccoons actually have 200 different sounds. Really? And that's what I do with my mind now. Yes. I just sort of tease it, tickle it, love it. Yeah. I don't have to isolate it and hurt it. Yeah. So you can, and my patients love this. I mean, like they name their mind Psycho Sandy, or one of them named his mind after his parrot because it's like the parrot had 8 words over and over and over again. And that's my mind, right? You're a failure. You should feel bad about that over. And it's like, no, put the lid on the parrot.
Do you remember Dr. Jose Silva? Silva mind control method. Like he talked about the drunk monkeys. Like you would never let a monkey loose in your kitchen. What would happen? Food would be everywhere. It'd be monkey poop everywhere. Well, that's what happens when you let your mind loose in your life. And I could hear him saying that. So when you said that, I'm like, Oh, and he would literally say, when your mind's going too fast, just say out loud, stop. He said, first of all, everyone will look at you, which will cause you to think differently for a minute. Okay, I got to stop this right now, right? So I love that. When does that book come out? That's next year?
Next March.
Next March?
Yeah.
We will be doing a podcast on that one,
this is in there. And then
yes.
Happiness is a daily habit.
Yes.
So what are the habits of happiness? I start every day with today is going to be a great day.
Yeah.
As soon as my feet hit the floor, today is going to be a great day.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to see you.
Yeah.
That'll make it a great day because it always is.
Yeah.
When I go to bed at night, and this is one of the most important things, people should write this down. When I go to bed at night, I say a prayer and then I go, what went well today? And so what I do to put myself to sleep is I go on a treasure hunt. And I start at the beginning of the day just looking for what went right. Now, the bad things will try to pop in and I just like big broom, sweep them out.
Raccoon.
It's not the point.
Yeah.
Not the point.
Not the question.
And I find so many things that are awesome that I didn't pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that's how I put myself to sleep. And it actually sets your dreams up to be more positive.
For sure.
And tomorrow is better because you sleep better. So it's these little habits of happiness. And then I look for the micro moments.
Yeah.
Like what's the smallest thing that happens? So even this glass of water, I mean, the glass is so beautiful and the water is so clean and it's there and available for me. That makes me happy, right? So where you bring your attention always determines how you feel.
Bingo. Bingo. Lot to unpack there for the person that's listening or watching this. Okay. Being mindful of time. I promised a bunch of people on Instagram that I would ask you a few questions.
We haven't done 6 or 7. And
Okay,
they're really
6 or 7.
important.
Okay, let's go.
6 is notice what you like about other people more than what you don't.
Say
if
that
you
again. Say that
want
again,
to be
'cause that's
happy,
big.
if you want to be happy, you have to give it away.
Yes.
And notice what you like about other people. I know I can make Tana yell at me. 10 seconds,
Yes.
I can make her crazy. And I choose not to.
Yes.
I know how to make her happy. I know how to make her want to cuddle with me.
Yeah.
And I'm focused on giving happiness away. It doesn't mean you don't notice troubled things. I mean, she and I are both really good when we didn't like something to be able to say it, but with kindness. And 7 is live each day based on clearly defined values, purpose, and goals. And you know, every good business person, they have a very clear mission statement, what they're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years, but they don't have it for their relationships. They don't have it for their health. They don't have it for their money.
Yes.
And I think it's just critical in a balanced way. And I don't have any tattoos, but if I did, is it true? Would clearly be one.
For sure.
And does it fit? Does whatever I'm going to do, does it fit?
Yeah.
The goals I have for my relationships, for my money, for my work, for my physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And when you get that clear, that's where success comes.
Is this on audio also?
It is.
Okay, I'm downloading that as soon as we're done. And this is mine, right?
That's
You have
yours.
to sign that for me. All right. Okay.
Okay, questions.
Are you ready? Rapid fire. Can you talk about false memories?
The brain is a sneaky organ and it lies. So if you're in therapy and you go, I think somebody molested me, I wouldn't go down that road unless you had clear memories because your brain can lie to you or you can be suggestible. It's one of the reasons hypnosis is actually not allowed in court because of false memories.
Right. That was, and so I'm going to screw this up here. So Lorette 4805. All right, the Johnson team asked, what's the biggest change we can make to improve our mindset during a shifting environment, business environment?
Well, one is to go, everything shifts always.
Right. The constant is change.
I mean, everybody's so upset about what's going on in society. And I'm like, oh, you didn't grow up in the 50s when we had to be under our desk every day. Or, we had air raid drills. Or the 60s when they really were burning down cities.
Right.
It's, things just cycle. And no matter where you are, right, because we're going to talk about the pandemic, I was on the radio every Thursday night in London, just answering questions from people who were scared.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's because we don't know how to manage our mind. And I would
Right.
often quote C.S. Lewis, who in 1948 wrote a piece on the atomic bomb. Everybody was so worried. And he's like, why are you so worried when the plague used to visit London every year? Or, when people are dying in car accidents or train accidents or cancer
Yes.
every day.
Yeah.
It's, if the virus comes or the bomb comes, let it find us doing sensible and human things like
Right.
playing darts or playing with our kids.
Yeah, I love it. So Narethinaha, some of these great names on Instagram. Basic supplement combo the doc recommends for taking daily for healthy brains. We've kind of covered that one a bunch. Thoughts on Lexapro?
I just posted a TikTok on Lexapro that has 1.3 million views in 24 hours.
Wow.
So Lexapro is an SSRI. It's
What's an SSRI? So
a
clear.
selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. It believes that people that prescribe it, that most depression is caused by low serotonin. That's been debunked. But for people with the persistent brain type, it can be really helpful. So that type tend to be worried, rigid, inflexible. If things don't go your way, you get upset, tend to be argumentative, oppositional. It's the depression with obsessive worry. Lexapro can actually be pretty good. For me, I would probably start with 5-HTP, but Lexapro is clearly an option. In fact, it's not a funny story. My mom broke her hip about 2.5 years ago. And she's a golfer, like 70 years of golfer.
Yeah.
And she couldn't play golf. And then she got shingles. And then in March of 2020, she and my dad got COVID. And then my dad died in May.
Yeah.
And she became mean. And I'm like, and I was mad at her because, I think we were both grieving. But then I'm like, she broke her hip, she got shingles, she got COVID, she lost my dad. She's depressed. And 2 days after I put her on Lexapro, she became my mom again.
So there is the positives.
Absolutely.
All right. So how about this one? We did brain health hereditary. So George Lawton asked, what is the most impactful nutritional decisions we can make to optimize our brain? I feel like we've answered that, but answer it again for George.
It's that question. Is this good for my brain or bad for it? Know the list and put as many colorful fruits and vegetables in your diet as you can.
Yeah. And I've been with George a bunch. He is physically fit, super strong, eats well, just had dinner with the other night. All right. So the Jamie McMartin group, personal client and dear friend, effects on long COVID on the brain fog, and no taste and smell now for 13 months.
Yeah, it's common. 80% of people get COVID complain of memory problems afterwards. Stunning. When the pandemic first started, I would have patients already had their scans before COVID.
Yeah.
And then after COVID, it's like a bomb went off in their brain.
Yeah.
Like dramatic hyperactivity. Things to calm down their emotional brain are really helpful, like quercetin, omega-3 fatty acids, curcumins can be really helpful, doing all the bright minds things we talked about. And sometimes we find ivermectin, I know it's a bad word, but we find it can actually be really helpful.
I used it multiple times and thought it was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Prescribed by my doctor. Yes. All right. So you ready? Next one is, okay, we kind of covered that one. So Valerie Marini _ARC. What is your opinion of CBD to treat anxiety?
It's not on the top of my list. It's risky. CBD is the Wild West as far as quality and purity and effectiveness. I'm going for things like theanine, magnesium, GABA, ashwagandha.
Yeah.
diaphragmatic breathing, hypnosis, not believing every stupid thing you think. With that question,
ants.
you should ask me, what do you think of hallucinogens and
There's so
psilocybin
much,
and
right.
ayahuasca,
Microdosing of LSD.
I'm just not a fan
Yeah.
of it. The big innovations in psychiatry are marijuana and hallucinogens. And I'm like, we are just going the wrong way.
Right.
If you have resistant PTSD and you've tried the other things, maybe that could be helpful. But I had just finished reading Will Smith's autobiography, which I thought was great, right before the Oscar. And the last chapter, he talks about doing ayahuasca 14 times. It obviously didn't fix him.
No. Carolyn from San Diego says, love him. What's his morning routine?
Today is going to be a great day.
Yeah.
And it's spending time with Tana. And I make her brain healthy cappuccino in the morning, a decaf cappuccino. And then I make us a brain healthy shake around 10 o'clock. I have meetings from 8:30 to 9:30, and I'm generally walking or I'm on the bike while I have that meeting.
Yeah, love it. Okay, I'm really glad this one got up. So Nini Photography says gut health and anxiety. Is there a connection?
Absolutely. In fact, if you had a lot of antibiotics as a kid, you're more likely to be anxious as an adult because your microbiome, the 100 trillion bugs in your gut, if they're not healthy, they don't create an environment for you to be happy. If your gut bugs are not healthy, do not have an environment to be happy. And it's like, what does that have to do?
Right.
So much.
Right.
Which is why you want to feed your gut bugs healthy fiber.
Right. Is it that? What about the, I drink this little gut thing I got from Whole Foods every day.
Kefir or
something like, I wish I could think.
Kombucha?
Not kombucha. The name will come to me probably as soon as we're done. Right. But it was basically, it's all about gut health. Like that's the whole thing. Tastes
you just have
horrible,
to make sure it's not a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah, no sugar in it. It tastes, my general rule is if it tastes horrible, it's really good for you. Right? That's the way my mind works. Okay. So Carly Capalia asked, how to have ADHD and be successful in my job and personal life.
Get it treated. And know what you're really good at. Do what you love. And do not hire another ADHD person as your personal assistant.
Oh yeah, for sure. So dear friend, longtime client Nazar asks, what foods are best and worst for the brain? So I think we kind of covered that one, but shout out to Nazar. Penn Bay Realtor, congratulations on getting married, by the way. Please talk about creative fatigue due to stress and what our brain does when that happens.
Well, if you don't have good brain healthy habits, and one of them would be you work too much, right? So you're not sleeping. So I would say, this is my 40th book, but when I put in good habits every day, it's easy to be consistent. When I have bad habits, because I tell myself everything in moderation, then it's hard to be consistent. And flying a lot, I know you fly a lot, that the toxins from airplane fuel are not really very good for your brain. So making sure you're detoxing and like going in saunas, there's actually research that shows people who take the most saunas have the lowest incidence of Alzheimer's disease.
Interesting. Thoughts on cold plunge?
Some people think it's really awesome. The research is not quite there. It's very erratic and it involves suffering. So I'm not a fan of suffering. I grew up Catholic, so I'm like, no, I did long suffering. I'm not doing that again.
I was thinking about our first conversation, like one of the first podcasts we did when you were like, yes. And I, was drafted and I figured out I was really not into being shot. So I decided I'll go become a doctor instead. All right. So this person may just be busting my chops because bananas is sort of a universal word for me, better than the F word or, it's extreme enthusiasm. That's really great. It's always bananas. But Jack White wants to know, what are his thoughts on bananas?
If they're green,
Yes.
greenish, they actually have a lot of good prebiotic fiber. If you
Okay.
feed your
Yep.
gut bugs, the riper they are, the more sugar they have.
Yeah.
So I think you have to be very cautious with them.
Yes. All right. Zach Loft, what's up, Zachary, says, hey, I'm young. I think he is. He's like 30, maybe less. Sorry, Zach. I'm young. What are 3 things I can do each day to keep my brain young and growing?
3 things. Love your brain. So I call it brain envy.
Yeah.
I always say Freud was wrong.
Yes.
Penis envy is not the cause of anybody's problem.
Yes.
You got to love your brain, avoid things that hurt it, know the list, do things that help it. And it's this like one little question. Is this good for my brain or bad for it? And then take a walk while you do meetings. You'll be more flexible. You'll actually be kinder if you do that because that raises serotonin. And then make sure you go to bed just like a half an hour earlier to wash your brain, because that, people don't know that.
Okay, so Duma and I talk about this all the time. So explain that.
So we didn't know this until about 10 years ago, that when you sleep, your brain washes itself. So people know about lymphatics. There's something called the glymphatic system that, during the day, trash builds up from all the work that you've done. If you don't sleep 6.5, 7 hours, your brain won't fully cleanse itself. Trash builds up, and then you don't feel right. You have more brain fog. And so making sleep a priority is absolutely critical. So decrease blue light at night.
Have an evening routine, like you have a morning routine that would fire you up. Have an evening routine that unwinds you. Right, which is probably
and
not
then when you go to bed, go what went well today. And I'm a huge fan. We have an app that I talk about hypnosis. We have hypnosis audios, music audios, rituals to kill the ants if they try to, because that's when ants come in. When you try to go to bed, the ants sort of jump on you.
Or at 3 o'clock in the morning when you wake up and you're like,
those are
I haven't done this yet. Oh my God.
the zombies that haunt you.
I'm at 3,091 nights. I'm now averaging 7 hours and 15 minutes. When I started doing this nearly 10 years ago, I was at 4.5 to 5 hours of sleep per night. And it was between you, Duma, and another one of my buddies, Dr. Ed Park, who said, oh, do you want to know the fastest way to shrink your body and kill yourself? Sleep less. He's like, your teleoids and all the, everything elongates or it maintains if you get 7+ hours of sleep. And I was like,
so important.
Got it. So someone's going to ask though, maybe last question just on this, and then we'll talk a little about the book. How do I get better rest?
You make it a priority. I think that's critical. You focus on it. You focus on a room that's cooler, dark, quiet, unless you're using, something like meditation or hypnosis to go to sleep. And you decrease the caffeine, because caffeine stays in your system for, I think its half-life is like 6 hours, which means by the time you go to bed, you still have what you drank in the morning that can have a negative impact on you. And, brain health is 3 things: brain envy, avoid bad, do good. Sleep health is the same thing.
Yes.
Sleep envy, care about it, avoid anything that hurts your sleep, and then promote the right rituals.
Yeah. I think that was the biggest thing for me was the, my Aura ring that literally tells me at about 8:30, hey, it's time to start winding down, because it also knows I wake up at 4:45, and there's just something about that routine, right? Like I used to think, oh man, I do all my best work at night. I get super creative. That's when I want to write like crazy. But the problem is that if I start writing at 8:30, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, the dopamine rush kicks in, and then I'm done writing, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm still amped.
And the next day, you're terrible.
I'm destroyed. So I just said, okay, it's a conscious choice 10 years ago. I'm going to switch my creative time, my best time. Tom Ferry, keep telling yourself over and over again, my best time is in the morning, right? Get up early, do your creative work, get your exercise in, do all the things you're supposed to do, and then attack the day. Just making the conscious choice, because I know someone's going to say, I'm just a night owl. No, you're just making that choice. All right, I'm gonna do something. So just for fun, you're watching this podcast right now. The first 10 people that comment on my YouTube channel, the most important thing you learned from this show that you're going to do, I'm going to send you a free copy of the book. Is that cool?
Awesome.
Awesome. So you got the exercise. The most important thing you learned that you're going to do, I'm going to send you a free copy of the book. So make sure you guys do that. Everybody else, they can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. What do you prefer, reading or audio?
I do audiobooks.
Yeah,
Because
me
I
too.
can do something else while I'm doing it. And
Bingo.
I like always have it with me.
Yeah. What do you think, though, from a retention standpoint? I struggle with
depends.
retention oftentimes with the audio, but I can get through it faster, but I still find myself having to stop.
Well, you know what I do is I'll get the audiobook and then I'll get the book.
Yeah.
Because then I have it and I can go back through.
Yes. Yes.
What I do, because you can't take your gadgets into your sauna. When I take a sauna,
Yeah.
I'll take the book in.
Yeah.
And I'll like, okay, these are the things I want to remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope everybody gets a copy of this book. I can't wait for the next one. Let's not wait this long to do another show. Please give my absolute best to your lovely wife. Closing thoughts for the person listening right now?
Happiness is a moral obligation. You're not selfish if you seek it. Hedonism is the enemy of happiness.
Yes.
But know what makes you happy and take care of your brain, and your brain will help you get it.
Love it. Love it. Love it and love you. Thank you so much for all that you do for so many.
Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate it. All right. Hey, if you have not liked, subscribed, and all that fun stuff, make sure you do so. And there's probably 5 people you know that whether they like it or not, they need to hear this message. So think about sharing that as well. All right. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care.